Headlines and hot takes, they have their place. But at our podcast, ESPN Daily, we don't just skim the surface of sports. Dude, I mean, this clearly transcends blood feuds, rivalries, sports. This is something far, far deeper than that. I'm your host, Pablo Torre, and every day we try to dive into the stories behind the athletes.
The picture of him in the dugout afterwards just looked like a guy who'd had his heart ripped out.
Listen to ESPN Daily wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. Hope things are well with you wherever you are today. Hope it's a payday for you. How about that? That'd be awfully fun, wouldn't it? This payday. I know it is for some people close to me, so I'm excited for them and excited for me. Love payday. Payday's like the best day of all time. Sleep a little bit better after payday. So I hope that's you. Give you a couple updates on some things. I told you guys that I had an opportunity to interview Chris Lemonis and Ron Polk earlier this week. Interviewed John Cohen last week. Going to interview a couple of Bulldog assistant coaches on Friday if things go as planned. And that'll be the final interviews for the book. There are 22 chapters now in the can. They've been edited. I will get those edits back, review that, either sign off on them or make some other changes. I'll also, later today, by the time you guys are listening to this, I'll be writing the Ron Polk chapter and then finalize the final chapter some point this weekend. Got some other stuff I got to do too. And then next week, maybe I'll have a little time to breathe. I've been working on this book now a long time. I say a long time. Lots happened in a short amount of time. We sat down when we got back from Omaha and said, okay, we're going to take a look at this and go ahead and get going. Kind of laid out a plan, began to kind of break it all out. So just to give you guys kind of some clarity on this. So I guess it was around July 8th when I started, kind of laying this thing out. And now here it is August 19th or August 20th. And we're going to be, after today, we'll be one chapter away from being done. So there's a lot of work that's been done. This is the longest book that I've written. It is one that is extremely detail-oriented. The first chapter is a Mississippi State baseball history. It's kind of like, hey, we won a national championship, but in order to kind of appreciate what we've done, we've got to talk about where we've come from. And that first chapter will get you up into the hiring of Ron Polk. And then Polk will take you kind of through the early years and then ultimately his full tenure. And then we'll have a chapter with John Cohen that'll take you up until the hiring of Chris Lemonis. John had some very candid things to say about his own hiring here at Mississippi State, about the hiring of Andy Cannizaro, the hiring of Chris Lemonis. Chris Lemonis had some candid things to say about that process himself. Then we'll have a chapter for each week of the season, take it all the way through a national championship, and then finally a chapter just to kind of tie it all up. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been an awful lot of work. Most of my books, the full books, have been about 75,000 words. They're around 300 some odd pages. This one's going to be longer. I won't say considerably longer, but it is going to be longer. And I don't mean 80,000 words. It could be 85 to 90,000 words. We'll see. But it's going to be a much bigger book. It's going to be very substantial. I've learned an awful lot. And we've talked about in recent days the Portico segment of the show. I've been doing more of a history lesson for you guys. And one of the things that I learned last night is going to be talked about today. Because I learned some really cool things. Many of you may already know this stuff. Maybe I'm late to the party. But we're going to talk about it anyway. Because I'm amazed at the generosity and the dedication that some people have shown Mississippi State. Had many of you reach out and say, hey, Steve, would you be willing to talk about my grandfather? Would you be willing to talk about this or that? And so a lot of good feedback about that segment. Also a lot of good feedback here as of late about the Wednesday Boneyard, about the Feinbaum comments of Mike Leach. Had several people that have reached out and said, you know what, Steve, I agree with you 100%. I've other people to say, you know what, Steve, I don't know why you let that guy bother you. I don't really let him bother me, but it bothers me when people say things negatively about Mississippi State that are not accurate. It's one thing, if people just have a negative impression of Mississippi State. It's like one of my favorite sayings is, it's almost impossible to reason with unreasonable people. And if people have their mind made up about Mississippi State or about me or about you or about Mike Leach, you're not going to change your minds. And so there's no point in doing that. But that said, if we don't at least answer some of that negativity with some honest reporting, then that kind of becomes the matter of record. And so that's really what my focus was with that Wednesday show is, okay, here's what was said about Mike Leach, and then here's the truth. Since that time, I have had no less than a dozen messages from people, either from Starkville or from Pullman, Washington. How about that? Some folks on the Washington State 247 site listened to the show and agreed 100%. So they were amazed at how accessible and approachable Mike Leach was when he was at Washington State. They also didn't agree with those comments. I've had other people that have shared stories about their families or their kids being out around Starkville and running into Mike Leach and him not just kind of hurriedly taking a picture and moving on, but taking a few minutes to visit. It's incredible. I won't say the name of the company because I don't want to put anybody in a bad spot here. But I had somebody else that, let's just say, has some knowledge about some things that were donated to Mississippi State. And then they get a personal thank you note from Mike Leach. They didn't just get the Dear John letter. They didn't just get, the little postcard. They got a handwritten note from Mike Leach. So my hope is that we have kind of nipped all that nonsense in the bud, because what happens is these people, that was the popular narrative, is that, well, when Mike Leach gets to Mississippi State, they're never going to see him. He'll spend all his time in Key West. Well, it's just not true. It's simply not true. And I'll be honest with you, I had some of those same concerns because, you hear these things, and you don't have a relationship with Mike Leach. You don't have a working relationship. You don't know how he operates. And see, I don't know. What's he going to do until he gets here? That was one of the big things that I kind of pointed out on Wednesday. There was a lot of people that said, hey, Mike's not going to be there for the camps. The coaches will do the recruiting. And, Mike just kind of lets them handle that. And then Mike's, here during the season, calls the plays and then leaves, for Christmas, comes back for bowl practices, and then, leaves again. And he's back for spring football, and then he leaves again. And he's gone for 4 months. But that isn't what happens. Here, I don't know what happened at Lubbock. I don't know what happened at Pullman, Washington, but I know what's happening here. And one of the cool things, too, is I'd mentioned to Coach Leach, earlier this summer, I saw him at a camp, and I said, hey, I got a couple things going on, and I've actually got a book I want him to sign for me. And he's like, hey, I'm going to be out of the country this week, but why don't you come by, when I get back? And then rather than, me having to kind of run him down, after he gets back and gets settled, he shoots me a text and says, hey, just let you know I'm back in town if you want to get the book signed. He doesn't owe that to me. And so I don't think it's some act. I think the only act are these people out there that are pretending that they know Mike Leach and what he's up to. I've also had several people in the media that have reached out to me and say, hey, man, I'm glad you said that. Glad you did that. Glad you kind of challenged some of that. Because my experience is Mike Leach has been pretty positive too. And that's not to say that Mike doesn't have some enemies in the media. He does. Had somebody tell me today, I said, you know what, I wish I could have said something, but I'm kind of in a precarious situation because I've got a working relationship with some of the people you're talking about. And so my hope is we've kind of put all that to bed. But don't listen to that trash. And that's exactly what it is. It's trash. There are some people out there that just have an anti-Mississippi State agenda. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're Ole Miss people. We kind of know where that's going. There are a lot of people out there that just want to be, provocative. They want to say negative things. They want to write negative things. And one of the reasons I think people write those negative things is, number one, they're just not good at writing. That's the first thing that I'll say. There are a lot of people that can't make it as a real writer, and so they do all this clickbait stuff. They want to tease you with it. That they give you these scandalous headlines, and you go read the article, and the article rarely ever matches the headlines. It's one step up from a Taboola ad on social media. You know what I'm talking about? Like those ads. It's like, so-and-so was abducted by aliens. And it's got like a picture of Ben Affleck. And you're like, holy smokes, Ben Affleck was abducted by aliens? And then you go look at the article and he's not even mentioned. But that's what journalism has become to some people. In order to keep a job, they got to monetize their content. So how do I generate more clicks? Well, let me just write something out there that's just scandalous and salacious, and people will click on it and read it because I'm such a bad writer that I can't make it without being some two-bit hack. There's a lot of that goes on, and there's a bunch of that in radio. There's a bunch of that, in sports news. It's just kind of what you got. And so Mike Leach is a bit of a big target because he is so eccentric. And so, again, I didn't know what to expect from Mike Leach, but I've been pleasantly surprised. One thing, actually, we're going to get his press conference a little bit, later in the show, but, I was always so afraid. I don't want to be in that viral video. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to ask the stupid question and then Mike Leach kind of tap dance all over my ego, and then the video gets out there, and then all you guys are kind of laughing at me. And I'm pretty self-aware, and I usually don't let things bother me, but I don't want that. I don't want any part of that. Because I've seen some of those press conferences. Mike Leach has got some things out on YouTube, but I'm thinking, man, I'm glad that I'm not the guy that asked that question. Because there are some people that ask some dumb questions. I don't think we've got a lot of people on our beat that do this sort of things. There's some people sometimes that ask questions that have maybe already been answered. But I don't think you've got a situation where people out here that are asking just silly questions. But, when you don't know somebody and you see those videos, it kind of becomes a nightmare situation. You think, man, I'm almost scared to ask a question. But it hadn't been that way at all. He has been very gracious with us in the media. We had a great time talking with him again today. I think a lot of people have asked him, questions about things that you want to know. And there are a lot of you guys that reach out and say, you know what, Steve, I wish you guys would ask this or ask that. I make all those notes. I do. And sometimes I get around to it and I ask those questions. I know when Dan Mullen was here, especially when things weren't good, many of you had questions. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? And sometimes those questions probably deserve to be answered. And so you ask them. Because I've always felt like, being a journalist, covering, a beat, you've got a responsibility to your readership. And so if your readership wants to know certain things, you've got to be their advocate. You got to go stand there in a press conference sometimes and ask a question that makes people uncomfortable. There are times that Dan Mullen deadpanned me. There were a couple times, when Dontavian Lee was a running back here at Mississippi State and had a couple pretty good ball games. Like every time we put him in a game, he was productive. And I asked Dan in a post game one day, I said, Dan, what's he got to do to get a little more playing time? And he just looked at me, kind of rolled his eyes and said, he's just got to practice better. Well, Coach, some guys are gamers. I'm not going to sit here and try to run your job. I didn't say those things. That's kind of what I was thinking. But if you put a guy out there on the field and, he's averaging, 5-6 yards a carry, and your other guys are averaging 2, well, at some point, maybe we need to de-emphasize what happens in practice a little bit. I think you got to ride the hot hand. But that's a story for another day. But again, thanks so much for all that comments and the feedback. I appreciate it all, even if we don't agree. That's one thing, that I feel like maybe maturity has taught me is that we can disagree about things and still be friends. I've noticed too a lot of times when we talk about music, some of you guys get awfully sensitive about your favorite music. I don't care what you listen to. I don't know. You don't need my approval to listen to it. But there are some bands I don't like, and I can promise you there's some bands I listen to you don't like either. And you know what? It doesn't make me like them any less. But we can agree to disagree and still be friends. I think that is almost a refined skill these days. There's just so much black and white in the world these days. It's like, either you believe this or you don't. And if you don't believe like me, you're my mortal enemy. I love all you guys. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care where you go to church. I don't care if you didn't go to church. That's your business. You have to be accountable for decisions you make. That doesn't mean we can't be friends. Some of my best friends don't share my values. And I learn a lot from them sometimes too. I've got one friend in particular who listens to the show who is probably, I feel like I'm really more of a moderate. and they're kind of an extremist, and I won't say which side because I don't want you guys to judge me, but it's like there are sometimes things will pop up, and I'll say, before I comment, because I don't put a lot of things out there politically on the show or on social media, and it's not because I don't have strong opinions. A lot of times I just don't want to deal with the hassle. And I also don't want to lose you guys as friends over things that don't really matter. But when I have questions sometimes, I'll text my buddy and say, hey, listen, a lot of people are really upset about this, and I'm not sure why. Can you explain it to me? And he tells me some things. It's like, hey, well, here's kind of what's going on with that. Here's what that means, because I'm an old guy. Sometimes I'm not aware of what's going on in the world. I live in the big maroon bubble. Sometimes it's 18, 19 hours a day, Mississippi State all the time. If I'm lucky, I get to go watch some Netflix. But I have learned from my friend, even if it's just something as simple as just kind of learning the other side's opinion. And so I think it's important to do that. And I wasn't always that way, to be honest with you. Used to, whatever I thought, that was the end of it. My opinion was mattered most. But I've learned a lot by being willing to listen. I want to thank you guys, too, that support Bulldog Burger Company. A lot of great food there. If you haven't been in a while, you need to go. 3 great locations now to serve you. It all started right here on University Drive in Start Vegas. Then it grew to Gloucester Street in Tupelo, and now Lake Harbor Drive there in Ridgeland. You're going to be glad you went in there. A lot of great reports, man. And listen, nobody does it better when it comes to portions. A lot of people are thinking, you know what, Steve, I go out here and I spend my 10, 15, bucks for dinner or for lunch, and I always walk away feeling a little bit unfulfilled. That's not going to be the case at Bulldog Burger Company. They're great. Great food, great portions, great prices, great service, great atmosphere, great locations. The folks that run these establishments know what they're doing. They know how to feed people. And that's what you want. Because after a long week, sometimes the first thing that I want to do when I get a chance to kind of get my hands around my family is, let's go out to eat and let somebody else kind of do the cooking and wait on us a little bit, and let's just kind of enjoy being together. A good night out at dinner is difficult to beat. And there's not a better family-friendly place than Bulldog Burger Company. Go check them out today. Have the pimentology, add bacon. Find your own favorites. Not a bad thing on the menu. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what Mike Leach had to say today. So I asked the question about Jordan Davis. And I know that Mike doesn't like talking about injuries, and he kind of gave me a no response. There's no update on that. We have to ask the question, though, because you guys, as our readership, you want to know, hey, what's going on with Jordan Davis? Now, Jordan has since made some comments on social media that kind of lead you to believe that all these rumors are true. I firmly believe that they're true. As I shared with you guys on Monday's show, after watching him go down in the scrimmage game on Saturday, it really looked bad. His body language wasn't good. Initially, they're down there kind of messing with the ankle, and you think, okay, listen, the farther down on the leg they go, the better I want to feel. Get away from that knee. But when they put him up on the cart and he just kind of rides with his head down and people aren't coming up talking to him, it was concerning. One of the things I'll share with you guys too, when Jaden Wiley went down in the spring game, you had that sprained MCL. We didn't even make it to sundown before, some people were saying, hey, he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. Well, we didn't get those messages with Jordan Davis. And that's always one of the things that I look for. Because listen, there are people that know that you guys are freaking out, and they know that you care. And they really want to reassure you when they can. But in this situation, we didn't get that reassurance. And so, it's out there. It's been reported, according to sources. We got a lot of those same sources too. But I thought, let's get Mike Leach to give us an official confirmation. Mike didn't want to do that. You know what? That's okay too. Because here's the thing, if he does it now, because all of a sudden that sets a precedent. And it's like, well, Mike, you told us Jordan Davis was out for the year. Why not tell us about this guy? And so we didn't get the confirmation. We also didn't get an update on Landon Guidry. But Landon Guidry, who is, running third-team safety, saw him get, when I got to practice last week, there was one day last week. I can't remember what day it was. But he didn't look good. He's out walking around with one of the trainers, like he's just trying to shake something loose. You know what I mean? Maybe trying to clear his head a little bit. Don't know. Like he was trying to catch his breath. And then now he's had surgery. Going to have another one in 8 weeks. So I think it's pretty safe to say Landon Guidry's not going to play football for Mississippi State this year. But Mike didn't comment on that. And that's not an indictment on Mike. That's the thing about, players nowadays with social media. A lot of times they kind of take control of their own announcements. And it's not just with recruiting. There are a lot of players who just kind of put it out there. It's like, hey, I'm out for the year. Thanks for your support. Pray for me. I got a long road ahead. Appreciate your support. There are a lot of guys who just do that. There was a situation earlier this year where I was breaking some news about Rocket, Watts from the basketball team. And as I'm in the middle of writing that story, he tweets it out. And you know what? I hated it. I had my story ready to go, but it's one of those things, you want to break the news, but at the end of the day, it's their news to break. And so when those guys kind of take charge on announcements, there's not a lot you can do. All it does is kind of confirm what you're hearing. But I think it's pretty safe to say, Jordan Davis not going to play for Mississippi State this year. Landon Guidry not going to play for Mississippi State this year. And the first thing that pops up is people say, man, why are we having so many injuries? We're really not having more than usual. The difference is, if they had had that scrimmage on Saturday and none of the media was there, most people wouldn't even know about Jordan Davis, until he put something out there. I mean, yes, there are things that leak out every now and again, but if you're not able to go to practice and you're not able to observe things, you don't find out things unless somebody tells you. And so this kind of got out because all the guys in the media, guys and gals, pardon me, in the media were there. And so it's kind of hard to hide that. We all see it. There's no official diagnosis or any official statement, but we all see the fact that, Mississippi State's best pass rushing defensive end is carted off the field. So it becomes a topic of conversation. The Landon Guidry thing, not so much. And that's not in any way to diminish whatever pain and recovery that Landon Guidry's coming through. It's, Jordan Davis, the guy who was expected to start. Landon Guidry's the guy that's kind of down the depth chart. And so in no way am I trying to suggest that Jordan's, pain and suffering is any greater than Landon Guidry's. In no way. Now, the loss to Mississippi State football, yeah, I mean, you lose a starter, there's more of an impact. But everybody makes a contribution, whether it be on special teams or whether it be in a reserve role or, playing against a non-conference opponent. It saves some wear and tear on your starters. I mean, it's really a war of attrition in many respects. So you don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see any Bulldogs get hurt. I don't want to see any guys on the other teams get hurt. I mean, we forget sometimes we're young people because, we get so caught up in rooting against people. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, this guy's out for the year, so it's bad for their team. But at the end of the day, there's a young man out there whose dream's been shattered, or young ladies. And so I never take any glee in any of that stuff, and I hope you guys don't either. It's just one of those things, that happens from time to time. And sometimes the lines of good judgment are kind of misconstrued when it comes to social media. It's like a guy goes down, and you're like, oh, that's a big loss for them. And people say it in such a way that it's almost like you're happy it happened. I think most people feel like I do. It's like I'm never happy to see a young person get hurt under any circumstances, no matter who they play for. Just not. And listen, there are some people out there and some teams that, that we play against that, it's difficult to root for them. They make it difficult. But that doesn't mean we should wish ill will on them, and I think we all agree on that. All right, so another thing, too, that I have kind of dug around a little bit, everybody's curious about suspensions for the Louisiana Tech game. Now, let me just go ahead and prepare you. There's going to be a handful of them, but we don't know who they are yet. I don't even believe that's been communicated to the team yet. I think, why would you do it now? Let's go ahead and let everybody kind of practice and work hard, get ready, and then once we get ready to kind of set the depth chart for Louisiana Tech, that's when you make the call because you want to get the guys that are going to play in the ball game to get the first and second team reps. You're not going to go out there and rep a guy that's not going to play. You may send that person a scout team, for a week, probably make them miss it that much more. But yeah, we're going to have some guys suspended. That's not news to you guys, but I have asked around about that a little bit. I think there's a really good chance you guys know who those guys are going to be. I don't think there's any question. DeMonte Russell and Malik Heath are going to miss game one. I think that is probably a given at this point. What happens with Emmanuel Forbes? I mean, all he did was, kind of towel whip a guy that was actually running at him. I don't know that I would support that, that suspension. Not that anybody cares what I think, but, I don't think he deserves to be suspended, even though he was, visibly involved in the altercation. But, a guy runs at him and falls and he whips him with a towel. I mean, is that really worth missing a game? I don't think so. But again, I don't get a vote in this thing. Aaron Brule was in the middle of that brouhaha, and that's kind of concerning, right? But, yeah, I think there'll be a handful of guys. Now, we had one guy transfer out of here. Brandon Cunningham was a guy that was, did some things on social media that kind of drew some negative attention to Mississippi State. And I know he said it in a joking manner and probably had no malicious intent. But when you have something like that happens, it is embarrassing to so many people. You can't really get out there and make light of it. You just can't. You can't be crass about it. And Brandon was. And listen, I'll be honest with you, I laughed when I saw the video too. But I also understand that's probably a guy that needs some discipline. Well, he didn't agree with it, so he hit the portal. And now here we are August 20th, and I don't think he still found the team. And Brandon was a guy too that I really thought a lot of, in high school. Really thought this is a guy that needs to grow up a little bit, but he's got a world of talent. Once he matures a little bit and kind of focuses on his craft, I think he's a guy that could potentially be a National Football League player. I think he had that kind of ability. But sadly, we just couldn't reach him in time. My hope is he goes somewhere else and kind of gets it figured out, grows up, gets his degree, and has a great career somewhere. I really hope that for him, as long as he doesn't beat us in the process. But, those are the kind of things you look at and you think about. But, there are going to be some guys suspended. I know that's going to kind of fuel some speculation, a lot of people will say. But I really don't think that Mike Leach will make an announcement until right before kickoff. And probably when he make an announcement, he'll just probably have media relations, release a statement, right before kickoff. Because why would you give Louisiana Tech any tips? You know what I'm saying? As bad as we all want to know, do we really have to know now? There's so many things that are part of public consumption these days because we feel like we've got, kind of the need to know, and we're kind of caretakers or shareholders in a program. And so we kind of want to know what's going on. But, does it really put Mississippi State at a competitive advantage to tip Louisiana Tech off that maybe certain players aren't going to play? They can all watch that video and probably, make some decisions on their own. So, yeah, that guy's probably going to be suspended. But Mississippi State gains nothing by making a statement about that now. Nothing at all. And so they shouldn't make a statement. But in the past, that's how we've done it at Mississippi State, is they will release a statement just before kickoff. They'll have somebody waiting there next to press row, just waiting for the team to line up, and then they go down there and hand out the sheet. Sometimes we'll get it a little before kickoff. And at that point, once it's game day, it's too late to game plan anyway, right? It is what it is. And so don't expect to hear anything before then. If there is an announcement before kickoff or on game day, I'll be surprised. And again, I don't think Mississippi State gains anything from it. Also of note, there may be another suspension.
Headlines and hot takes, they have their place. But at our podcast, ESPN Daily, we don't just skim the surface of sports. Dude, this clearly transcends blood feuds, rivalries, sports. This is something far, far deeper than that. I'm your host, Pablo Torre, and every day we try to dive into the stories behind the athletes.
The picture of him in the dugout afterwards just looked like a guy who'd had his heart ripped out.
Listen to ESPN Daily wherever you get your podcasts.
Not related to the fight after the Armed Forces Bowl. You guys probably read with great interest that Tupelo wide receiver Trip Wilson alleged to have been driving under the influence. And so there was an article read, and I read some of the negative reaction to the fact that the article got written. And there are a couple things I want to say about that. Here's the deal, is that anytime somebody gets arrested, it is public record. It's in the jail docket or on the police blotter or whatever you call it these days. And so it's already out there. It's already online. And you say, well, why do they have to draw negative attention to it? Well, it's because these guys live in a fishbowl. When you play football or baseball or you do anything, when it comes to college athletics, if you get in trouble, it is going to make the paper. That's just a reality of life. You don't get to live like other college kids do. Your roommate down the hall, who's just maybe a biology major that likes football and plays a lot of video games, that guy gets a DUI. His name may go on the jail docket or in the bad dog section of the Reflector, but they're not going to write a feature story about it. When you are on an SEC football team and you do anything whatsoever to break the law, it's going to be in paper. And if you were a guy that plays any snaps at all, it's probably going to be on the ticker on ESPN down there at the bottom. So everybody sitting there watching SportsCenter is going to see your name kind of crawl through there multiple times. Now, the other thing that I'll say, and in no way am I ever going to try to diminish driving under the influence in any situation whatsoever. And I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite and say I never did it, because I absolutely did. And I was wrong for doing it. But public drunkenness sometimes is part of the college experience, not so much driving under the influence. But listen, alcohol and college kids kind of goes together. And again, in no way am I defending the action, but it's just one of those things that's going to happen. When you're involved in that, when maybe you're living the typical college life and you're not the typical college student, your name's going to be in the paper. And it's going to embarrass your family. It's going to embarrass everybody that knows. A lot of people say, oh, man, that's just kids being kids. And then there's some truth in that. But at the same time, too, when you get behind a wheel and you're intoxicated, I got 2 girls that go to Mississippi State, too. And they don't live on campus, but, they spend a lot of time on campus. They got friends on campus. And so, somebody gets behind the wheel of a car and they're intoxicated, you're putting my family at risk, too. Not just yourself. What if you hit one of my girls? What if you hit somebody else's girl? And so, again, I guess it's kind of a public service announcement, for young people. Please, 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 call an Uber, call a friend. Don't put you or anybody else's life at risk. And I don't want to sit here and belabor the point like I'm beating up Trip Wilson. I'm not, because I did a lot of things worse than that. But I just think it's important that we understand it's those stories are going to be written. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Along those lines, I don't know if you knew this, but today, Friday, you're going to have 6 Kentucky players in court. And we think, oh my gosh, this happened. Let me read you what happened in Kentucky. And I know some of you are scared to death of Kentucky, which I still don't understand. According to police, on Saturday, March 6th, this goes all the way back to March, 4 months ago, there was a private party being thrown at a residence. During the party, 3 individuals entered the residence uninvited and were asked to leave. The individuals became upset and threatened that they would return. Police say a short time later, 3 individuals returned with additional subjects. The group forced their way into the residence. One suspect was observed pointing a firearm at a victim. Police say Tisdale has an added charge, it's one of the players, of wanton endangerment because they say he was identified as a suspect with the gun. Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops provided the following statement. I am aware of the situation that arose today. Out of respect for the legal process, I cannot comment on the charges. We have been aware of this matter since March, as we withheld the players from team activities while a student conduct review was held. Based on the outcome of that review, the players returned to activity in June, so it seems like maybe they just didn't substantiate the allegations. But the criminal charges are still pending. We are evaluating the current situation as we receive more information. So, to be honest with you, again, not trying to in any way belittle the DUI, but this is a much different deal here. The players involved: Joel Williams, Vito Tisdale, Ernest Sanders, Reuben Adams, Jutton McLean, Andrew Phillips. Those are your suspects. And again, we talk a little bit about drinking and driving and that sort of stuff too. You guys just put the guns down, okay? I mean, we've been talking about this forever and a day. Why do you have to go somewhere you're not invited? And listen, there may be extenuating circumstances. I don't know. But to go back with a weapon as a private citizen to a party where you've already been asked to leave, that's just asking for trouble. It's absolutely asking for trouble. And listen, we're not alone. We're not alone with having some kids do some silly stuff. I'd much rather deal with the typical public drunkenness and that sort of stuff, or minor in possession, than deal with gunplay, for sure. But it's happened all over the country. And college athletes simply are held to a higher standard, as they should be. Many of them are going to school for free, which makes this all much more infuriating. It's like you have been given every opportunity in the world to get, a lead on life, and this is what you do with that opportunity. And that's not to say that, there aren't young people out there doing the right things, but it's just one of those things you wish you could just take and shake them and say, listen, guys, whatever argument you're having right now, whatever took place, if somebody stole your phone or whatever, your girl's in there with somebody she's not supposed to be, all that is temporary. But when you go get a gun and all of a sudden the police have to be called, you're thankful nobody got hurt, but all of a sudden temporary situation becomes a permanent problem. And those are the things you look at and you just think, man, guys, please use some better judgment. A lot of that. All right, so let's get into what Mike Leach had to say a little more now that we're done with that, because I guess it just blows my mind. All right, so, and you can read the full transcript of Mike Leach's press conference on Thursday over at genespage.com for free. And so one of the things that he was asked about, hey, what do you want to get accomplished this Saturday in a scrimmage? And as of now, we are still invited to come. He goes, just improvement, steady improvement. Then we go into the mock game week where all the periods are the same as game week. And so next week is basically a dress rehearsal. And again, I don't know how much access to practice we're going to have, because I'm sure at this point we're starting to kind of settle the depth chart, start working some formations, probably do a little bit of game install. So we hit next week kind of running wide open. So, mock game week allows us to kind of, work out any kinks that we have. So next week it's all about Louisiana Tech. We'd like to be in a good position to do that, have a good, crisp, well-executed scrimmage. Now, one of the things that he had told us on Saturday is that, he'd like to see some sustained execution. He called it streakiness. And he goes, yeah, we've improved a little bit. It's a constant battle no matter who is doing it best. He's talking about offense and defense. So that led me to ask him, kind of as an offensive-minded guy, a guy that really, is trying to scheme up the defense, what are you seeing from the defense? And he says, and this is music to Bulldog ears right here, I think they've improved. You kidding me? We were great last year, and we were missing a lot of pieces. And I think maybe that's where the improvement kind of stems from, is the fact that, we've got, a full roster of defensive players to kind of pull from. I think we've got a little more depth. We certainly should have some more at safety. We've got more people contributing. Now, then it gets tough to say. Offensively, you're improving too. You hit some stalemates there a little bit. I think both sides are better than last year by a significant margin. Now, Mike Leach is not a guy that is the coach speak guy in many respects, and he's also not the sunshine pumping guy. He's also not the poor-mouthing guy. Usually if he tells you something, you can pretty much take it to the bank. If he tells you the offense is looking better, in his mind they're looking better. He's not going to tell you, hey, let's tell everybody offense is looking great so they'll go buy season tickets. I mean, that's not going to be, his angle there. And so that's encouraging to me. And he mentioned the stalemates. I followed up and says, hey, but as a coach, don't you want those stalemates? And he goes, yeah, you want them trading plays. If one side dominates, maybe they did a heck of a job, but it means you're struggling on the other side. You'd like them trading plays instead of long streaks. That's how I've always looked at it. That's exactly what you want. If one side of the football, if one unit's dominating the other one, then one of them isn't any good at all. We've been through that before. Everybody's like, and our defense is going to be so great. We try to make ourselves feel better because they would dominate the scrimmages. And it got to be that under certain coaches, the defense would play so well because the offense was so anemic, they just closed practice and wouldn't let us come. Because that just led to more questions. Coach, defense has been dominating all camp. What's going on with your offense? Well, I don't know. I mean, how many times can they say is, well, our defense is really good. Well, the defenses you're going to play are really good too. And some of them are going to be great. So I respect Mike Leach for, shooting it straight there. And it's nice. It's interesting too. There's some people out there that have this perception is, hey, man, you just got to keep it real. Well, keeping it real doesn't always mean being negative. Sometimes keeping it real is positive too. Sometimes you can be honest and the truth actually be a positive thing. It's difficult sometimes for people to understand that concept. It's like they're only honest when they're griping and, matching our negativity. They're not honest when they're telling us, hey, looking okay. One of the things I ask him, too, is about energy. He always talks about, having energy in practice, being excited to play, that sort of stuff. And he says, I think as far as playing hard and being competitive, as far as being excited to be out there, I think we're doing a really good job. And that's when I followed up and I said, Coach, you always talk about be the most excited to play. And we've all seen the videos. Mike always talks about that. Always be the most excited guy to play. And so I asked him, these guys that have been in the system for a year, been in the culture, are they elevating their play in that respect? And he goes, I definitely do. I think we had some addition by subtraction, and I think we had more time to work and steady off seasons. Now, that's an important statement for a couple reasons. Yeah, you had spring practice and you had a normal summer. And so there's been some continuity and guys have kind of gotten back into a regular routine. But let's go back to this addition by subtraction. We had some guys last year. I'm not going to mention any names, all right? And I know it's going to lead to some speculation, and that's okay too. We had some guys last year on the team that were kind of malcontents in the locker room. It's a lot more fun to go practice when you know that the rest of your teammates are also excited to practice. When I've got guys out there throwing their helmets and threatening to quit and cussing out coaches, is it fun to go to practice when that happens? No, it's not. Especially if you're serious about it. Hey, I want to go win. And I got somebody over here being selfish. I got somebody over there being self-centered in how they act, and they don't get their way, so they throw a fit. We got to stop practice, and it's a distraction to the rest of the team. Well, that's not happening this year. We've been at every practice. I've missed 2, had a couple of appearances, but when I hadn't been there, Mike Nemeth and Paul Jones have been there. I mean, if anything was going to break out, we're going to be there to cover it. There's just nothing like that. We had the little, dust up in practice a few days ago before the scrimmage, and that's just, we put the pads on, all of a sudden guys are out there, instead of leaning against each other, they're popping each other a little bit. So, yeah, so temperature's flared a little bit. That's just part of being a competitor. Wasn't any malice behind it. It's just time to roll. But those are the things that I begin to kind of think about as we begin to move this thing forward, is that, we just don't seem to have a lot of bad actors on the team. We just don't. And last year it was completely different. There were some times last year, just, kind of talking to some of our staffers. There were some people you kind of walked around almost on eggshells to avoid because you just never knew. And I had somebody very, very close to the program tell me last spring, is that, hey, Steve, there's going to be some guys leave the football team this year. And they're going to be names They're going to be names that our fans know, and people are going to be shocked. But Mike Leach is not going to put up with all of this temper tantrum stuff from certain players. And he didn't. And you're reaping the benefits from that now. Because one of the firm things that I believe in life, kind of a foundational standard for living, is you train people how to treat you. And so if people find out what you're willing to put up with, they're going to kind of live up to that. But if a guy's out there, hollering and screaming, throwing his helmet, threatening to quit, and, jumping on this guy or whatever, and always got something to say and blaming somebody else, and you let that happen, like Leach always says, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. That's kind of what he's talking about. You're allowing this to happen. And so you fix it. And you hold people accountable. And the rest of the team, when they see that guy that's maybe a little more emotional, a guy that gets elevated at times when things get a little bit, tough, they're all watching him to see how to act. And say, if Coach will let him get away with that, he'll let me get away with it. Well, you're just not having that this year because you don't have anybody out there throwing a fit. And, yes, we've had some of that the past 3 years. We had a lot less of it last year, but we still had some. 2019, we had a lot of it. We had a bunch of it. In case you've forgotten, 2 of our star players got into a fist fight in middle bowl practices. It was a product of the culture. And I know there are some players that were upset with me when I said that, and I still stand by it. We had culture issues under Joe Moorhead. No matter how good a leadership we had or the best efforts of some of our veteran players, we had culture issues. Because why else would 2 players feel like, after they've already been separated, feel like it is acceptable for them to get in a fist fight and practice with their coaches and the other teammates watching? Why would they think that is okay? It's not like they're just, completely oblivious to the standards of life. There are just some things socially you don't do. And, sometimes you have guys, bring a little pepper to to a practice session, but it gets over. But the fact that the whole thing was over, it was the conflict was done, and then next thing you know, we're engaging and going again, and we're throwing licks, and then we lose our quarterback, who was guilty too. And Garrett Schrader wasn't some angel. It's like a lot of times we find guys and we root for them and say, hey, listen, it's my kind of guy. Well, you don't know what kind of guy he is at all. You just know they can make some plays on the football field. Well, I think he's my kind of guy. Well, he's your kind of guy because he's wearing maroon and white. That's kind of where the list ends. It's our guys and their guys. We like our guys better than theirs. Our guys are saints. Their guys are bums. But we had to correct the culture. And we had good culture when Dan Mullen was here. And Dan didn't recruit a lot of bad actors. He didn't. There were some exceptions. But by and large, we didn't go out and recruit that element. And so, what I'm seeing in practice and what I'm seeing, in the building, I'm seeing a lot of guys that are really more committed to football. We see guys around town. They got a different look on their face these days. I think there's a lot more confidence in what's going on. I think they're excited to play football for Mississippi State because there's not that distraction. You don't have to go out there to practice and think, is that guy going to blow up today? Are we going to have another one of those things? Are we going to stop practice again? Well, this guy needs to get his diaper changed. Is that what we're going to have to do again? Just imagine how that would be if you're serious about playing football. And maybe if you're not even a pro prospect, but you say, you know what, I'm going to go out here and give the best I can. I'm going to go win some football games this year and have a good bowl trip somewhere. And then one of my guys that I'm supposed to count on is out here constantly being a distraction in practice. And it was constant. It wasn't just every once in a while. It was all the time. Maybe it's not fair to say all the time, but it was regularly. And so now all of a sudden that negative element is removed from the equation and all of a sudden the culture improves. It's incredible what accountability does to a group of people. All of a sudden you find out, well, this is not acceptable. Okay, we're not going to put up with this. If you want to act that way, then that's fine. It's like, and listen, I'm going to be careful how I say this. But I had a guy tell me this one time, when I was in retail management, I used to talk about, man, there's some guys out here that probably not living up to what I would expect. And I was young in retail management. He goes, man, it's a guy named Lorenzo Hickson. He goes, Steve, I'd rather have a hole than a butthole. Talking about in your staff. I'd rather be short-staffed than have to deal with all this. And I worked for a guy one time too. He goes, I'm not going to pay anybody to give me a headache. And so either you're helping the cause or you're hindering the cause. But as a guy that's been able to observe just about all of our practices, I can tell you, you just don't see that element anymore. And as a Mississippi State fan, that should excite you. Time for today's top 10 list, brought to you by closewithblair.com. Blair Chandler, great friend of mine, known Blair a long time. Great guy, great businessman. And here's the thing, too. There's so many people out there that are so intimidated by the mortgage process. You think, man, Steve, I don't know how to go about this. What do I do? Well, it's a convoluted process, and you need somebody to kind of guide you through. That's where a guy like Blair Chandler with 21 years of experience can help you. There are a lot of people out there that are kind of breaking into this industry, and you know what? Maybe you've got a real straightforward conventional loan. You know what? Maybe it'll work for you. But maybe you got a few warts. Maybe you got some credit repair you got to do. Maybe you don't even know how to go about this. Stick with the winners. Not saying anything negative about anybody else, but when you got a guy that is in the top 1% nationally in loan originators in the mortgage industry, that's the guy you go with. Blair Chandler been with Ferry Mortgage for a while now, one of the top 5 mortgage lenders in the country. A guy that can handle that hard-to-get-approved loan. And here's the thing, too. Because he values doing business with Bulldogs, he's going to pay for your appraisal just by mentioning the show. So you know what? Hey, in your emails, your texts, your phone call, and say, listen, Blair, I want to give you guys a chance to get this thing done for me. I've had trouble elsewhere. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go about it. You just tell him you heard about it on the Boneyard. He's going to pay for your appraisal. It's going to make it even easier for you guys. Matter of fact, Blair let me know today. We had a Boneyard listener in the pipeline now with Blair. Boneyard listener. Said, hey, listen, I do get my appraisal paid for, right? Because I heard about it on the Boneyard. And he's like, you absolutely do. So it's not just, a catchphrase. Blair means it. I believe in doing business with Bulldogs whenever we can. I encourage you to do the same. So visit closeablair.com. And maybe today you're thinking, Steve, I don't know if I can remember the website. Let me give you the number. Maybe pause the show or come back to it a little bit later. Or in worst case scenario, just message me. I'll send it to you. Blair Chandler, easy to reach. And listen, I don't mind if you share this number. Blair won't either. Maybe you've got friends, maybe you've been turned down elsewhere. 601-500-2344. 601-500-2344. He'll answer your text or call. Blair Chandler. Closeablair.com. All right, top 10 list. And Roy has kind of disappointed me today. I wanted to go with some rock. Because we did NXS and we've done some pop stuff here as of late, with Justin Timberlake, and I just felt like I needed to cleanse the palate just a little bit. Even though I like those artists, I just felt like it's Friday. We need to have our fist in the air. It's payday too, right? So let's jam some rock. And so this band I'm about to talk about, I don't talk a lot about faith with you guys, and it doesn't mean that I don't have it, because I do. I'm not ashamed of it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm happy to talk theology with any of you folks. And again, even if we don't agree, we can still be friends. It's true. I got a lot of people that don't believe the way that I do. They're in my life. I don't cut them out. I don't see them as people that I can't learn from, or perhaps that they can learn from me. Just don't do it that way. And so the band I'm about to talk about is a band that actually brought me closer to God back when September 11th happened. I'd kind of heard of the band. I liked a couple songs early on, but their fourth album, I guess it was, and their most successful album was released on 9/11. It's kind of an ironic thing. And there were a lot of young people around the world that really gravitated to this album. It is their best-selling album, and it is a Christian rock band, and most people don't even realize they're a Christian rock band. They absolutely are. It's a band called Payable on Death, better known as POD, out of San Diego, California. And Sonny Sandoval goes all over the country with Lacey Sturm, formerly of Flyleaf, and Brownhead Welch from Korn. They have an organization called the Whosoevers, and they go out and give their testimony, and they talk about their lives and all the things they've gone through. And I don't know if you guys know this, Lacey Sturm actually spent some time on the Mississippi Gulf Coast as a young girl, a teenager, I guess. But so they are doing a lot of good in the world and kind of carrying the banner for their own faith. And so even if you don't share the same faith that I do or they do, you can still enjoy the tunes. But here's the thing that I'll say. There are a lot of people, and this may ruffle some feathers, but there is a lot of Christian rock stuff or Christian music that is simply not good. And you say, well, Steve, what are you talking about? It's just not. And the reason that it's not more mainstream is because it's just not as good. And I don't know if it's because the record companies just don't put production value money behind these artists or support them. And there's some of it that's absolutely great. I was a huge Michael W. Smith fan for years and years and years. Years. Loved Stryper, loved Petra, loved Bloodgood. A lot of those bands. Sonic Flood. Great. Delirious. And so some of them are really good. But sometimes the production value and the quality of the songwriting and the music is just not. This is a mainstream rock band that is carrying a very positive message with Christian principles. And a lot of their songs are about Jesus Christ himself. But next thing you know, the people are listening to it and are like, wait a minute, is this about Jesus? It is. And one of the things that's kind of heartbreaking too is like, I liked Flyleaf a lot, especially when Lacey Sturm was there. And she actually does a part on a new song from Love and Death, which is Brownhead Welch's side project, a song called Let Me Love You. Lacey Sturm is on that one. It is phenomenal. But when Lacey Sturm had the huge hit All Around Me, and it's a song about God and about her own Christian faith, I read recently, there was a tweet about it, and somebody said, it really disappointed me to find out this song was about God. And I think to myself, number one, it can be whatever you want it to be. But where are we as a society when somebody is singing about their own faith and we're disappointed? We're disappointed. Oh, I hate to hear this. I love this song until I found out it was about God. Listen, the problem isn't the song, and the problem isn't Lacey Sturm. The problem is you. It's like you are the issue. Look in the mirror. All right, so here are my top 10 POD songs. And again, Payable on Death is what it stands for. And that is basically about, your sins and your mistakes. Your debts were paid when Jesus Christ was crucified. That's what it means, payable on death. All right, and so I got a couple honorable mentions. Here We Go, and then the song Satellite, and then Murdered Love. And that's about the crucifixion of Christ, the day they murdered love. All right, so number 10, this is a big hit, I guess, off of, I can't remember the name of the album, but it's Will You. That's a good one. Number 9 is Lights Out. That was probably, didn't get the airplay that it deserved. I think that is a great tune. And if I'm not mistaken, it's on the Greatest Hits album. But that's one that I think probably should have been a bigger hit. Number 8, Set It Off, is one that wasn't released as a single. It's a deeper cut on the album Satellite that was released on 9/11. Dig that one a lot. Number 7, Goodbye for Now. And if memory serves me correct, Sonny Sandoval wrote this about his mother. Because, the passing of the physical sense on earth is only a temporary thing, even though it feels much worse. And so when Sonny Sandoval was just a teenager, I guess he was 17, 18 years old, his mom was a devout Catholic, and she tried to keep him in church, going to Mass and things like that. He rejected it. And then through her own fight with cancer, he became very involved in the church. He became very inspired by her courage. And so after she passed away, he said that he would honor, her wish in many respects and stay in church. And then he eventually converted to Christianity and does a lot of great things ministry-wise out there. All right, number 6, and this is on their third album, which was their first major release. It's an album called The Fundamental Elements of Southtown, and this is Rock the Party. Was the second single off that album. Southtown is South San Diego. They lived in a rough neighborhood, and so this is kind of what that album is about some of the things they grew up with. But Rock the Party was actually a huge hit for them. At one time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like this Total Request Live videos. It seemed like it was number 1 forever in a day. All right, number 5, and this is one of my favorite songs in the catalog, and it didn't get a ton of radio play. But it's Going In Blind. It's just really about one of those things, man, when life just seems to be beating you up. I just don't know which way to go. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to this situation blind, trying to show some faith. I'm scared. I'm going to trust, but at the same time, too, I'm human. And there are a lot of times I listen to a song and, man, I get a little emotional because it's like, how it is. There's a song for every mood, and this is just one of those ones when I'm just in the right mood, it hits me just right, man. Sometimes it heals me, and other times it reminds me how broken I am. Number 4, going back to the fundamental elements of Southtown, it is the somewhat title track, Southtown. This is the song that really made me fall in love with POD. I didn't know where Southtown was. I didn't know what they were talking about. I just knew that their sound was a little bit different. They're kind of a new metal thing, because they're kind of, rap and at the same time too, their tuning guitar-wise is a lot deeper than most. So it's not always this happy-go-lucky stuff. But Southtown just seemed like, this is an aggressive song. I can dig it. And that's what they're trying to do as a band, is they're trying to play songs that attract people, believers and non-believers alike. And then, all of a sudden, you just hear a great song, and the next thing you know, you listen to it over and over again, then you're singing along to it, and you kind of figure out what's going on. And so the final 3 are all off the Satellite album. And this is one of those albums. So Fundamental Elements of Southtown sold 1 million copies, and then Satellite, the follow-up, sold 3 million. And then Payable on Death, I think, went gold. Payable on Death was also kind of a controversial album cover because Sonny believes in kind of bringing the guys from the neighborhood along, and so there was some Latin artists that did some cover art for them. And a lot of people thought that the image on Payable on Death was somewhat pagan, so they didn't carry it. And I'm sure it hurt sales. I mean, that's just part of the deal. But, all that stuff's kind of interesting to me, too. Sometimes we're just a little bit too, I think we're too cognizant sometimes in our witch hunts. It's like, well, let me go, these guys, they sound too much like the world, so there's got to be something else to them here. There's got to be something, I knew it. I hate that stuff, man. I do. I hate it. Why can't we just enjoy things for what they are? Well, we always got to look for something ulterior. All right, so these next three songs are huge, and I think about those kids in 9/11 because, it's one of those things when we all went home. I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and all of a sudden all this stuff's going crazy, and all of a sudden they're canceling schools, and they're sending everybody home, and all the federal buildings are being locked down. We didn't know what was going on. We just knew we were under attack. And I remember going home and I'm watching TV and watching all that coverage for days upon days, and I worried so much about the world that I was going to, pass along to my children. What are they going to do? And I remember just being so emotional thinking about, Ani was just a kid, and I was starting thinking to myself, well, what happens, if this thing really goes off the rails, and, we're at war with the world, and, what if he has to go fight? What if they reinstitute the draft? I mean, it's just all that stuff that goes through your mind. And so that Satellite album brought me a lot of peace. And even to this day, when I put that on, it takes me back to that. And it's like, it builds such strength in me to listen to that album. And I think it's because I was so vulnerable, I could listen a little bit better. Because sometimes we think we got the world figured out. And I think we all found out after 9/11 that we are not in control, that we're just kind of along for the ride. And so the song Youth of the Nation, this is your number 3 song, Youth of the Nation. There are a lot of young people that really spoke to them. And it's a song about, the school shootings at Columbine and other places. But it's just an incredible song, and I think it became anthemic to so many young people because there was such a feeling of patriotism in America at the time. And I really felt for those kids. I really did, because I thought, look at what we have done. Look at what our generation has done. Well, Steve, we got attacked, and we did. But, at the same time, too, what about our leadership? We've got to do some things, too, to ensure the world's a more peaceful place. And I know that's kind of Pollyannish at times, too. But there's a lot of international policy and some things we could do a lot better. Number 2, a song that was absolutely huge for them. And it was on heavy rotation on MTV back when they still played music. And it's a song called Alive. And it is basically just kind of this unabashed, unashamed declaration of belief in God. That's what it is. It's like, I feel so alive, and I'm not going to deny you no matter what they say. I mean, it's really kind of in your face, and it's so atypical for a lot of Christian music. It really is. And the fact that the song was such a huge hit, if you're a believer in Christ and you're a believer in God and church and those kind of things, why wouldn't we celebrate that? The fact, okay, this is a song about faith and honoring your faith that is being played all over the world and on every radio station, rock station in the country, and this message is being sent out there, or we're just unhappy because it's not on K-Love only. That stuff, it's just, I just think to myself, let's stop hiding it under a bushel. We were taught that in Bible school, right? This was a lot of mine. Remember the song, right? Why do we want to hide it? All right, so the number 1 song, and I love it. Matter of fact, the first chapter in the new book is named after a line in this song. We used to have it as the pregame soundtrack at Davis Wade Stadium. The song is called Boom. Usually people call it Here Comes the Boom. Chapter number 1 in the book Dogpile, The Boys from the South. I absolutely love this song. I listen to it all day today on repeat, preparing for this. Went back and listened to a bunch of POD stuff today, and then once I kind of got my list together, I said, you know what? I'm rocking Boom the rest of the day because it is a masterpiece. I absolutely love that song. If that doesn't get your heart pumping, nothing ever will. And I love the fact that we used to use it, that whole part about, here comes the boom, ready or not, here come the boys from the South. And they were talking about Southtown, but it applied to us too, and I thought it was super cool. And I wish there was somebody out there I wish I had the time and the know-how. I'd make my own Mississippi State baseball video to this song. Just, when they do the little celebration after a home run and everybody goes boom, I would time it up and it would be amazing and everybody would love it and it would make the whole world happy. All right. If you have ideas for top 10 lists, reach out and let me know. I'm happy to deal with them. I'm happy to do them. We've got a list. Roy kind of stays on me. Steve, we got to quit freelancing and got to get on the list. People are going to get, impatient. And some of you do, but you guys are good about it. But if you've got ideas, let me know. Reach out on social media @ScoutSteveR. And if you're looking for those lists, most of them every one of them, I guess, since last October when Roy got involved, are on Spotify at Dogmatic67. And then Izzy Mandelbaum does the iTunes stuff for us. And so it's on Twitter. I do share it on Facebook. But you guys have been killing it, man. The numbers have been through the roof lately. JT didn't do quite as what I thought it would do, but it's interesting, the things that you guys enjoy. So I hope that you listen to POD. I don't think it's going to do Poison numbers because it's probably a little too hard for some of your delicate ears. But again, this is a Christian rock band, so you should be supporting that. POD. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. Standing man, Miss Kathy Brown, lovely, talented Susie, everybody up there will treat you like family because in their minds you are family. Simple as that. Go by and see them today. Outfit your family in the latest in Mississippi State fashions. If you can't make it by, go visit their fine selections at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays, and that is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. And that gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. And who doesn't want free shipping, right? You're just going to get something free for listening to a show and putting down a code? Come on, man. What could be easier in life? You work hard for your money. Why give the post office all that cash? Use BSR. Campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. You can shop online with other places. You could. The promo code won't work there, though, right? So support a Starkvillian institution in Campus Bookmart and save a little cash by being a Boneyard listener. Again, it's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. All right, we're going to talk about Texas A&M today. And I like this A&M team. I do. And maybe I like them because Kellen Mond is gone. I wasn't a big Kellen Mond fan, but I'll be honest with you. The guy played really well last year. I mean, people would say, well, Steve, you kind of hated on him for years. And I did. I thought he was awful. But Jimbo got him turned around, and he really had a good senior year. He's with the Minnesota Vikings now. 2 years ago, if you told me that guy was going to get drafted, I'd have laughed in your face. Took 4 years to make him a serviceable quarterback, but he played well last year. And listen, Texas A&M probably deserved to make playoff. And some would argue against it, but I think, what did they finish? 5th? You know, they had a good year. They did, in some difficult circumstances. But A&M is expected to be a pretty good team this year, too. I don't know if I buy all the hype with them. I did last year. I really did. One of the main reasons that I like Texas A&M is Isaiah Spiller. I absolutely love his game. Listen, he is a pro back playing college ball right now. I love him. I absolutely do. I love everything about the way the guy runs. He has good burst. He's a guy that runs well behind his pads when necessary. Last year, of course, rushed for over 1,000 yards. Back in 2019, we had a full season. He ran for 946. Last year, in an abbreviated season, he still found 1,000 yards, 1,036. Average 5.5 yards a carry. And listen, if you're averaging 5.5 yards a carry, why would you ever throw the football? My goodness. He had 20 receptions for 193 yards last year. Average 9.6. So good job for him. Somebody's going to get a great back when this guy goes pro. I hope it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really do. I love this guy's game, and he is a huge part of their offense. Now, the quarterback situation is rather interesting. Now, some people early on kind of projected that they knew exactly what was going to happen. They said, oh, yeah, it's going to be this guy, it's going to be that guy, whatever. It's going to be Haynes King. That was kind of the consensus favorite, I think, out of spring. It was going to be Haynes King. Well, as of yesterday, it wasn't Haynes King. They hadn't made a decision yet, but the first-team quarterback is Zach Calzada right now. Zach is running first team. Haynes running second team. So Jimbo says it won't linger into the season. That's the hope anyway. And, you know, that's a veteran coach. He's not going to let that happen. You know, he didn't want to have a Dan Mullen 2016 year, you know, where you still got Nick Fitzgerald and Damian Williams alternating series, even though Nick was the better quarterback. Yeah, I said it. But anyway, so that'll be interesting. You know, Haynes King is a bigger guy, a guy that's probably more of a pro prospect. But, you know, we'll see how things go. And listen, they returned so much of the skill positions offensively. Once they settle the quarterback situation down, they're going to be a good team. Are they going to be in the mix late? Probably not. But they're going to be. They could be a Florida Bowl team easily this year. I don't think they could be a 10-win game. a 10-win team this year. We got to go down there, so that's not great. But I like the team. And again, it's going to boil down to quarterback play. That's going to be the difference probably in, maybe the Gator Bowl or the Outback Bowl. I mean, it's probably boils down to that. They got some dudes for sure. Defensively, they're returning most of the defense. My notes show that it's 9 of 11 starters returning. That's pretty good stuff. Mike Elko, the defensive coordinator there, got a lot of guys to work with. And listen, they were a great defense last year. And people kind of slept on A&M a little bit too. Guys, A&M last year allowed 317 yards, 22 points per game. The only team better against the run last year was Georgia. It's a good team, for sure. Now, Mckinley Jackson, you may have heard we talked earlier in the show about some guys that got in trouble. Mckinley Jackson facing felony drug charges. Don't know what his availability is going to be. Don't know what those charges look like. They're really kind of cryptic about all of that. You would think we would know. But again, every state's a little bit different. But, Mckinley Jackson hadn't been available, facing a felony charge. The guy that absolutely ate our lunch last year, Bobby Brown, is gone. Thank goodness. And so we'll see what happens with that. So, with McKinley out, I guess it's 8 starters. But still, that's a lot of talent to return. Buddy Johnson's gone. He's one of the leaders that was gone. He's another guy that had a big game against Mississippi State, if I remember correctly. Aaron Hansford's a guy now expected to kind of step in there at the weak side guy and do a good job. But listen, they've recruited well, especially on defense. Jalen Jones, Miles Jones, they're big, long, lean corners that can match up with X receivers outside the numbers. So, listen, this is going to be a team that's going to be a really good team. And it's all going to boil down to quarterback play. Probably the difference in being a really good team and a great team. So let's look at the schedule real quick here. And, it's you look at this and you begin to ask yourself, what's going to happen with this team? And they get a lot of their tougher games at home, which always seems to be the case. When you've got a veteran team, it's like it all kind of works together. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you feel good about your season, it's like all the toss-up games are at your place. When you're kind of unsure about how your depth's going to be, it seems like all the toss-up games are on the road. It's just kind of how it always seems. So they open up with Kent State on September 4th. They travel to Colorado, and that may turn out to be a decent ball game, but A&M should be able to out-athlete them. They get New Mexico at home, and then Arkansas at AT&T. You remember that game last year? That was a wild game between A&M and Arkansas. I mean, wild. And listen, I kind of like the fact they play this thing in Arlington and the fact that it would get me out of a September football game in the heat. I'd be all about that, going and beating Jerry World. But I tell you, the last couple of years, that game has been one of the better games of the weekend. It has been great. So they'll play Arkansas on a neutral field, and then they host us October 2nd at their place. Don't know the time of that game yet. The next week is Alabama. So in some respects, you could look at this and say, you know what? Even though it's a home game, we're kind of in there, kind of in a trap situation. If they're expecting a big year this year, we might catch them looking ahead to Alabama because they get Alabama in College Station too at Kyle Field. So maybe we get them looking ahead a little bit, and we'll see. I think Zach Arnett's going to have some things kind of queued up for him. It's just going to boil down to how well we can play offensively. I'm not automatically counting that game as a loss. I think, if I'm being honest with myself right now, it's probably a game that we'll lose. But we'll reevaluate that after the month of September. By the time we get there, who knows what we're going to look like? We're going to have a pretty good idea of who we are and what our identity is by the time we get to A&M. After Alabama, they travel to Columbia, Missouri. And again, that's a game you look at too. Let's say they go get their brains beat out against Alabama, and then they got to travel to Mizzou. Mizzou is going to surprise some people this year. Again, I don't expect them to contend in the East, but I think Eli is such a good coach. He will scheme some people up and have those guys believing. They're going to beat some. They got a great quarterback too. So then A&M hosts South Carolina. That'll be a big win. And then they host Auburn. It seems like all these games are at College Station, right? Well, November 13th, they head to Ole Miss, and that should prove to be a really good one. And see, here's the thing that I look at with that one. So A&M has a veteran defense. Ole Miss does not. And the veterans that Ole Miss has on defense don't play defense well. Isaiah Spiller will probably be the SEC Player of the Week if they win this game. Matt Corral and those guys will scheme some things up, and it'll be in Oxford. So I expect a barn burner of a game. I'm sure Jimbo will probably shorten the game, and that's the thing, too. People talk about how time of possession is a meaningless stat. A&M, one of the best teams in the country last year with time of possession. And then look at what they did, how they managed games and played so well with a lead. The next week, they'll host Prairie View A&M. Then they end the year at LSU. That's always an exciting game, too. So you look at this schedule and you begin to think, okay, where are the sure losses? Based on what we know right now, until we know the quarterback, it's difficult to project a whole lot. Alabama's probably, a loss, but I don't think we can just automatically crown Alabama the champs right too with a brand new quarterback. Defensively, it should be very good. But you look at this. There's not a single game you look at here except maybe Alabama, and that's in Kyle Field, that you look at and say, you know what, that's a certain loss. So A&M could really stack together, back-to-back really good years, and that's what they've been waiting on with Jimbo. It's one of the reasons they gave him that big 10-year contract, for, $75 million or whatever it was. Maybe more than that, I don't even remember. It's ridiculous numbers. But it's one of those things you begin to think, is this A&M train finally getting on track here? I think it probably is. Now, they have basically been the same program as Mississippi State for much of the last decade. Does that mean they're going to leave us behind? No, I don't think so. I think we're about to elevate our game too. But I think this A&M thing is going to bring more parity in the West. I really do. So I look forward to that game. Look forward to having a chance to go back down to College Station. If you've never been to Kyle Field, let me encourage you to go. I know you see the stuff on TV, but it's a different deal going down there and kind of seeing all that together. Everybody hugging and singing in unison, that kind of stuff. It's different. I'm still not real big on the yell leaders. I think it's weird. But again, I don't go to school there. I don't pay tuition there, so they don't need my vote. It's just weird to me. But I do like going down there. I think it's basically a bigger version of Mississippi State when you go to A&M. It's very, very similar. And College Station and Bryan are cool little towns down there. So look forward to getting down there and checking it out. If you've never been, plan to go now. Go ahead and make some plans, because I don't think Texas is ever going to shut the state down no matter what they do. So kind of look ahead to that. And if you're on the fence about going, let me encourage you, go down there and check it out. And you can go down there and say hello to Ross Bjork while you're there. All right, Portico. Brooks Bryan is our friend, your friend, everybody's friend. Brooks Bryan is a guy that we will owe a debt of gratitude forever, because Brooks robbed a home run that sent us to Omaha against the University of Washington. I remind him of that because sometimes Brooks forgets. He forgets that he made that great play because he's done so many great things in his life. He's like, oh, yeah, I did make that catch. Steve, thank you so much for remembering. No, seriously, I think Brooks' wife told me he has it like blown up at a life-size poster in their living room wall. But listen, Brooks is a Bulldog and committed to Mississippi State, committed to the greater Starkville area, trying to make it a better place to live. Part of this great group that has set up this new residential development right off of 12. So basically, you turn off of 82 on 12 like going to campus. The very first right is Pat Station Road. You cross all West Point Road, there it is. Portico, your new home. It's right there. 1.1 miles from campus. You can start with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or you can go all the way up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home. To fit any family or any need, whether it be your primary residence or perhaps your weekend getaway or an investment property. Maybe you want to buy it and just Airbnb it out. I don't know what your needs are. Brooks is happy to talk to you about all that stuff. And maybe you're just thinking, you know what, we're just kind of doing some due diligence. Give Brooks a call. Don't be scared. It's not like you're going down to one of these condo things and like, oh, somebody's going to win $10,000 and you leave with like a Wrigley's whistle or something. It's not like that. He's your friend. He's just going to give you a little information. He's not going to like keep calling you and bugging you to death. And many of you have said, one of these days, Steve, I'm going to move back to Starkville, or we're going to move up there, we're going to retire there. I've had some of our listeners reach out and say, Steve, thinking about retiring to Starkville, what do you think? I would absolutely advise you to do that because we need as many Bulldogs around as we can get. Give Brooks a call today at 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. I think there's one house left in Phase 1. Phase 2 construction, that's all getting underway. So if you're looking to move soon, they can accommodate you. If it's something maybe you're going to do, maybe you want to come spend Christmas in your new home in Starkville. How cool would that be? Move the kids up here. They want to go to Duty Noble every night anyway. Make Portico your next move. All right. So this new segment with Portico, I'm really happy with this, and I want to talk to you guys about a gentleman by the name of Dutch McCool. The name sounds familiar? It should. Everybody knows about McCool Hall. If you've ever been a student at Mississippi State, you know about McCool. Maybe you don't know the story behind it, but you know that is the business school. And so it's interesting how all that kind of came to be. So Dutch, his real name is E.B. McCool. They called him Barney. I think I would go with Dutch too. Dutch is a cool name. Kind of reminds me of the Karate Kid because Dutch was the real smarmy guy. You know, he's even worse than Johnny. You know, it's the guy you wanted to just go stick, right? So he played baseball at Mississippi State with Paul Gregory, earned 2 degrees over his lifetime, and was from McCool, Mississippi, down there in Atala County near Kosciuszko. And very humble beginnings. Came to Mississippi State, got a great education here at Mississippi State, played a little baseball with Paul Gregory, and then began a life of business. Went to work, became one of the founders of the Holiday Inn hotel chain. You heard that right. A guy from McCool, Mississippi, comes to Mississippi State, plays baseball, gets a degree, and another one, and then helps establish one of the greatest hotel chains the world has ever seen, Holiday Inn. Doesn't it make you want to go stay at a Holiday Inn right now? Knowing that there's a Mississippi State Bulldog in the middle of all that stuff? It does me. It makes me think, you know what, when it's all said and done, and I'm picking a hotel room and the prices are similar, I'm just going to go to Holiday Inn. Because I'm staying with family, right? So back in 1972, after Mississippi State had gone to the College World Series for the first time in 1971, our first time to go, Coach Paul Gregory took us. Incredible. Duty Noble was here for many years, 26 years, I guess, 26 seasons with Duty. And we never got to Omaha. And granted, the part of those years when Duty was coaching, you couldn't get to Omaha. The very first College World Series, I guess, played in 47, and that was, I think, the last year that Duty Noble was our head coach before he went to the athletic department full-time as the AD and promoted Doc Patty as lead assistant coach. But Gregory takes us to Omaha, and there's all this excitement around the program. Kind of like there is now, even on a grander scale, right? And so we'd never been, so there's like, hey, what can we do? It's time for baseball to get to the next level. What can we do? So Dutch McCool gave money to build light standards and put up lights at Duty Noble Field. You talk about a game changer. It absolutely was a game changer. One of the first schools in the SEC to have lights, Duty Noble Field. And so now all of a sudden, instead of having to play all these baseball games at 2 and 3 in the afternoon, when a lot of your local fans couldn't be there, now you can play at night. And let's be honest, there wasn't a lot to do back then. There just wasn't a lot of entertainment. We didn't have Netflix back then. You know, so people would get off work and they'd go watch the Bulldogs play. And now they could do it because the scheduling times were a lot more convenient. And so it was one of those things that really advanced Mississippi State as a program. Because of the fact, with greater attendance, there were greater resources. They were able to kind of reinvest those resources back into baseball. What happened next is even more incredible. So President Giles was kind of working to try to get some money approved to the IHL board and try to get some things championed to get the business school up and going. We needed a new place to house a business school. So Dutch McCool gave Mississippi State $500,000 in 1972. You can only begin to imagine what that would be worth today. And that's why McCool Hall is named McCool Hall. And it's not named after him. It's named after his parents, J. Ernest and Savannah Doty McCool. And then once they got McCool Hall built, he gave them another $100,000 to furnish the place. It's incredible. And again, this is the big Holiday Inn money, right? And so Dutch McCool, a man of very, very, very meager beginnings, becomes a state baseball player and alum, and then gives close to $1 million back to the university in a really short period of time that really changed the trajectory of a lot of things. But you look at what he did for Mississippi State baseball, and he didn't stop there. You know, he continued to help Paul Gregory and was very generous with his money in Mississippi State for years and years and years. But I'm struck by his generosity at a time in 1972. And what's so funny, too, it was such a fortuitous thing. He had no idea that Dr. Giles was having this difficulty with the state legislature and the IHL board. Had no clue. Just out of the blue, he just picked up the phone and said, hey, you know, I've always appreciated the quality of the education I got at Mississippi State, and I want to do something. I want to give something back. How's $500,000? It's incredible. I mean, it's just one of those things that's part of the great Mississippi State story that just, you know, of his own volition, this is, you know what, I want to do something great for my alma mater. I've been very blessed in my life. I've advanced my life, and a lot of it is because of the fact that I got an education at Mississippi State. So let me do what I can to help Mississippi State, to educate future business leaders. It is an incredible story. You can look up some of those facts yourself. If you're looking for Dutch McCool, it won't work as well, but look for Barney McCool, Holiday Inn, Mississippi State, something like that. And you can find there's an interview with Dr. Giles that's out there online, which is so great about the internet. There's a lot of things that I researched a year ago that now, a year later, that there's more articles that have been kind of archived. So there's more things that you can find out there online. And this is one of them. This is one of those things that's popped up here recently. And I'm just amazed by it. It makes me so proud, too, to be affiliated with those kinds of people. Somebody that was so savvy in business that they built their fortune up to the point that they could basically build a business school here at Mississippi State that our students today still enjoy. And it was one of those state-of-the-art facilities. I mean, it was like, I don't know what it looks like today, but when they built it, there wasn't anything better around here. It wasn't even close. And it was something the university was very, very, very proud of. And so, Dutch, Barney, thank you. On behalf of a grateful Mississippi State fan base, thank you. All right, so if you're looking for books, you can find them at alphadogsthebook.com. You can get copies of Flim Flam, Stark Villains, and Alpha Dogs. I'll personalize them however you want. It's always great when you guys let me know you got them. I appreciate that. And if you're looking for Blooms of Oleander, you can find that at great bookstores anywhere. If they don't have it, they can get it rather easily. If you don't care about supporting your local bookstore, that's your decision. You can go to Amazon.com and you can order the book directly there. It won't be signed, but they'll send it to you. It's also available as an ebook on Kindle and Nook, which is a first for me. We've never done that before. This new publisher that I use, that's what they're doing. It's also still on the bestseller list in Mississippi, which is very, very amazing to me. You know, a little over 2 months later, it's still on the list, and I want to thank you guys for that. It's a very personal book. I worked very hard on it. I will probably do something like that again. I don't know if we do it next year or the next, but we'll do something. I don't know what I'm going to do next year. This is supposed to be my year off, and they ended up writing 2 books. I might need to rest some next year, sit around and watch Netflix for about 10 hours a day, just let my mind rest a little bit. But this new book, Dogpile, has been such a labor of love, and as I've shared with you guys before, you know, the hope is to have it out to you guys in late October. I've got my fingers crossed that may happen, but we're looking really more like an early November release. And as I get that information, I will share it with you. Let me re-emphasize to you as well. I talked to my agent a couple days ago. And so not only are we preparing for you guys to pre-order, we're already getting pre-orders from bookstores. There are already bookstores that are reaching out saying, hey, we got to get a big order. So when you guys do your initial order, we're going to need X number of books. And so people are already beginning to make their plans to stock those books. But you can't depend on that. And listen, I want everybody that carries the book to make a ton of money and everybody very happy with this production. But in order to make sure you get a book, especially if you're somebody that lives out of state, you need to pre-order. You need to pre-order to make sure you get it. Because that's going to be the only way to really guarantee you get a book. Because once they hit the bookstores in Mississippi, we don't have any control over that. There are bookstores now that I know they're already beginning to hear from some of you saying, hey, put me on your list. Because I got to make sure I get this book. And I'm very, very proud to hear those sort of things. So the link, and things got pushed back a little bit this week, but they actually asked them to make a change on the cover because I wasn't happy about one small thing. They're going to fix that. So we're going to release the cover, and then we're going to do the link for the pre-orders. My hope is it's next week. I know I've said that for 2 weeks in a row, but I'm kind of dependent on other people to get that stuff done. And so I'll start whipping the mules a little bit this weekend, see if we can't go ahead and get that done. Because, listen, Christmas is going to be here before you know it. And, you buy this book around the 1st of September, about 6 to 8 weeks later, hopefully you'll have a book. Dogpile. It's been an incredible journey. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit tired. I am. I am. That's a lot of writing in a short amount of time. But I'm very, very proud to do this for you guys. And your support means more to me than I could ever share. And one more thing I'll share with you before I go. I got a phone call today from Scott Foxhall, and I'll be interviewing Scott, briefly about a couple things for the book. But Scott shared with me, he goes, Steve, he said, it's amazing how happy everybody is. I said, yeah, it really is. And he goes, I almost wouldn't have wanted to know how happy everybody is, because if we had known how wonderful all this would be, and it would be so much better than we ever imagined, we probably would have tried too hard and might have even messed it up. And so he said everywhere he goes, everybody is just smiling. Anybody that recognizes him is like, you know what, thank you, Coach. Thank you for this. Because we've all waited for this for so long, and we deserve it so much. And I've read so much out there online sometimes that, there's just some people that always kind of had a negative slant that, I can just see a change in their countenance. And there's some other people out there that are always going to be miserable. It's like we win an AFL championship. Well, what are we going to do next year? Well, let's enjoy this for a while first. But, talking with Scott too, I was kind of burnt out, to be honest with you. Really burning the midnight oil. Worked about 17 hours on one chapter yesterday. And, Scott's like, Steve, just want to appreciate you being along for the ride and your coverage of Mississippi State baseball. And sometimes it's all you need to hear. Sometimes that's all you need to hear is to get some words like that from somebody that you respect and admire. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to be in the position that I'm in. I never take it for granted. And I can't wait. I've watched the Game 3 with Vanderbilt again tonight, and I was watching the crowd and watching all you guys out there chasing foul balls, and I was like, man, I cannot wait for us to be back there. I wish we could go now. I've got such great memories of that place. Both times that I have gone have been incredible. If you've never been, plan to go. Go ahead and make a commitment now. Start putting some money aside, whatever you got to do. When the Bulldogs go back to Omaha, we all got to go together. That's going to do it for today. We'll see you next week. We'll recap Saturday's scrimmage. We'll have a chance to watch that. Hopefully everybody gets out of that thing healthy. That's our biggest goal, right? Let's get out of the weekend healthy. And we'll talk about that on Monday. And the next thing you know, man, it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks, man, we're playing football. Cannot wait. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
Headlines and hot takes, they have their place. But at our podcast, ESPN Daily, we don't just skim the surface of sports. Dude, I mean, this clearly transcends blood feuds, rivalries, sports. This is something far, far deeper than that. I'm your host, Pablo Torre, and every day we try to dive into the stories behind the athletes.
The picture of him in the dugout afterwards just looked like a guy who'd had his heart ripped out.
Listen to ESPN Daily wherever you get your podcasts.
Gym sessions and sweaty summer activities are back, which means more funky smells in your clothes because sweat leaves behind bacteria that causes those hard-to-remove odors. Clorox fabric sanitizer products are ready to zap the stink out of fabrics in your home by getting rid of 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria. Eliminate odors in every load or sanitize fabrics between washes with one of our fabric sanitizer products. Search fabric sanitizer at Clorox.com to learn more. When it counts, trust Clorox. Use as directed.